Yo guys, so welcome back to the YouTube channel. In this video, I wanted to take things back to basics and do a really step-by-step beginner video on how to take better videos with a GoPro camera. So I've been wanting to do a video like this for a while. Really do enjoy using them. They're really versatile, tiny, little action cameras that can capture all your adventures, pretty much anything really. And with the release of the Hero 9, which I'm recording on now, the camera quality is insane and the features on there, on the actual camera and the stability is next level as well. So if you know a few little tips, you can really take your video footage to the next level without really doing too much or having to be like a really professional videographer or anything like that. Sorry, we're on a road here. I'm walking to the cafe and I thought I'd just basically use my time better. So you might hear the odd scooter going past. So we're walking through a rice field.
Yes, right, brother. Where are you going?
I'm just walking.
Walking?
Okay, yeah, I'm walking. He was trying to offer me a lift. So before we get into the juicy details of all the settings and stuff like that, I want to take things right back to the start and talk a little bit about the outside of the camera. Okay, so this is my GoPro Hero 7. It's been used quite a lot, used and abused. If we take a look at the outside of the camera, you'll notice that it has a bunch of these little holes everywhere. Got one here, and underneath as well. And these are all microphones, so these are all working together to capture all the audio for your video footage. I'm going to show you a couple of cool ways later on in this video about how you can optimize the audio quality on your GoPro, because the sound quality out of these things out the box isn't fantastic. And as well, the outside of your camera, on the Hero 7 and the 9 anyway, you can take the lens off, which is amazing, which you can't do on the Hero 8, which is why I didn't buy the Hero 8, but that is really useful if you want to put ND filters on there, and it just protects the lens inside as well. So if you do end up scratching it for some reason, you only have to replace this part, not the actual whole camera. Okay, so now we're going to go inside the camera. So once you turn your camera on, use the side buttons to turn it on. If you press the top button, it will just start recording or taking photos or whatever you set it to. Use the side buttons to turn the camera on, whatever GoPro you have, and you'll be met with a bunch of menus. Get yourself on the video settings, and then if we're talking about the GoPro Hero 9, which we're on now, there's a number of different settings inside the video setting, which we're going to go into now. If you got this camera out of the box and you wanted just to plug and play, put everything on automatic, you can do that. If you're wanting to get the absolute best quality videos or higher quality videos out of this camera, you need to start shooting things on manual and get a better understanding of what everything does, so you can adjust it to specific environments that you're shooting in. And one of the first things we're going to talk about is what quality you're going to shoot in, because there's always this big debate whether you should shoot in 4K, whether you should shoot in 1080, or even now on this GoPro Hero 9 you can shoot in 5K, which is crazy. The logic is, oh yeah, I'll just shoot in the highest quality, then my footage will look amazing. But that's not actually the case. You've got two main options to shoot in my opinion. You can either shoot in 1080 or 4K. They're the most talked about. And naturally you'll want to just go straight to 4K because you're like, oh, better quality means better videos, or higher quality is better videos, but that's not actually the case at all. Yeah, sure, 4K is higher resolution, but that also means that it's 4 times the file size compared to 1080, which is a bit of a nightmare when it comes to battery life on these GoPros and when you're editing the videos later on. So that's the exact reason why 99% of the time for uploading videos to YouTube, to Instagram, to Facebook, pretty much any social media platform, I will just stick to using 1080p, because once it's on YouTube and you put it in the highest quality setting to watch as a viewer, I don't personally think you can tell the difference between 1080 and 4K too much. There are times when I would use 4K, say for example, if I'm doing some work for a client and they want 4K video footage, or they specify that, that's a video for a different story. For you watching this, I would personally stick to 1080. Let's move on to talking about field of view. In GoPros, you've generally got a number of different field of views to work with, and basically field of view means is how much view your viewer is going to see in the final video. This is the narrow view, this is the linear setting, this is the wide setting, which I would usually film most of my vlogs on. And this is the super view field of view, so you can probably see like quite a lot either side of me going on there. So when it comes to knowing which field of view to use, there are a couple of different scenarios. So for example, our YouTube channel, I primarily use what I'm shooting on right now, which is the wide field of view setting for most vlog kind of videos like this. If we're out mountain biking or doing anything adventurous, extreme, something that's got action in it, I would generally go towards the super view field of view, because I want people to experience everything that's going on around me and just basically be in my shoes. Superview also works really well when you are in areas where there's really nice landscape. So if you're in the mountains, say, or there's a really nice view, Superview can help you get all that image in your shot. Now at the other end of the spectrum, we've got narrow and linear. Narrow is something I don't really use too much, but I have been experimenting recently with the linear mode for when I'm shooting B-roll footage or kind of like cinematic footage. So I'll put some clips on the screen now of a recent visit we had to a resort in Ubud, and you'll see that I went around the hotel shooting all kinds of B-roll footage to put over my audio. Sometimes if you shoot too wide, it kind of gives off the wrong kind of feel for your video, so linear does come in handy. So next thing to talk about is frame rate. Frame rate is the amount of frames that your camera will capture every single second. So you'll see things like 30, 60, 24, 25, 120, and that basically means it's capturing 30 frames a second or 60 frames per second. If I am shooting mountain bike footage, or again, something with a lot of movement going on, and I want to get that speed aspect coming across in my footage, I will generally go for a slightly lower frame rate, anywhere from 24, 25 to 30, no higher than 30. If I was wanting to film slow-mo footage, like super slow-mo stuff, I'd probably go 60 frames a second or even up to 120 frames a second, which you can do on these new GoPros. So we'll talk about shutter speed, because shutter speed goes hand in hand with your frame rate. So shutter speed is basically the amount of times your camera opens and closes when it's filming. You do have an automatic setting on the GoPro which you can just select, but like I said before, if you want to start getting better videos, I'd start just getting familiar with the manual settings in your camera, which isn't too hard to do if you follow the steps in this video. Once you start playing around with shutter speed, you'll notice you've got a number of different options, from like 1/125 or 1/250, or drop it right down, you've got 1/48, 1/60. The way I like to think about this, and it's kind of like a golden rule when it comes to video making, is that you should always, or at least have a play around with, using a shutter speed that is double your frame rate. So if you've got a frame rate of 1/24, then your shutter speed should be about 1/48. Again, there are caveats to that though, which I'm going to explain in a second. Okay, so we jumped on the scooter, found a straight bit of road, and this first clip is a fairly high shutter speed, so you can probably see a lot of detail in the grass. Then we turned the scooter around and I actually lowered the shutter speed a fair bit, so it was capturing less frames every second. And here it is side by side. So on the left we've got the higher shutter speed, and on the right we've got the lower shutter speed. Hey buddy, say hello. What's this? What's it? Oh god. Okay, we're gonna talk a bit about white balance. White balance is basically the way that you can manipulate the temperature, is biting my arm, of your footage. So right now we've got a fairly warm temperature going on, but you can reduce the white balance down to bring out the cooler colors in your video, or the opposite direction, so you can go hotter as well, or warmer. For me though, I like to stick around between about 5,000 and 5,500 K, and K stands for Kelvin for some reason, on the white balance scale, and they are generally where I stick to when I'm making videos. Okay, we'll move on now. We've left the little puppy alone, we've moved location. We're going to talk a bit about ISO settings now. So what is ISO? ISO is basically a way of manipulating the light inside your camera. So for example, depending on where you're shooting, it may be too light, it might be too dark, and ISO is just a way of manipulating the light and getting the lighting a little bit better for what you're shooting. Now there is a caveat to this. Let's say for example you're shooting in really low light, which is kind of normal for me because we're from Scotland. If we go riding in the woods, say, it's generally pretty dark, and GoPros, although they are amazing action cameras, in light like this, which is very bright, as soon as you go into anything really dark, these cameras start to struggle. You can manipulate the settings inside the camera to an extent, but then it gets to a point where you are compromising on quality. So right now, my ISO settings are set to 100. Both the ISO minimum and the ISO maximum are set to 100. So that's the lowest you can put them in the GoPro, which basically means you're not trying to introduce, or I'm not trying to introduce any more light to the camera, because we're in this really, really nicely lit setting. But if you do start shooting in low light and you want to increase the ISO a little, do it in small increments. Quickly, I wanted to jump in and let you know that I've put together an ISO cheat sheet essentially, which I'm going to share in the next couple of seconds. So get ready to screenshot this page. It's going to help you decide what to set your ISO at depending on where you're shooting. Screenshot this next slide. Rule of thumb though is try and keep your ISO as low as possible. That's from my experience. And I would always try and adjust your shutter speed and your frame rate before you touch your ISO. ISO is kind of like the last thing you'd want to adjust. So audio on these cameras, yes, it is okay. It is not perfect. It's not like you have a big microphone on the top of the camera. Like, this is the audio coming out of the camera right now, so hopefully it sounds okay. There is a little bit of wind as well, so hope that's not affecting these cameras too much. Inside your camera, you'll have settings where you can either keep the audio on automatic, so the GoPro will figure out whether it wants to optimize for windy conditions or whether you want to switch it to more of a stereo mode. So stereo mode is more like if I was talking to the camera like this in like a non-windy setting, stereo is probably better for picking up voice like this. When there's wind and other external noises going on, sometimes it can be pretty tricky to set up. For that reason, I generally keep this setting on automatic unless I'm going filming mountain biking or any kind of sport which has a lot of speed in it. If that's the case, then I'll just put it in wind and let the GoPro do the best it can. Now, I did say I would give you some recommendations for some accessories. One thing I would recommend getting is a link I'll put in the description below, are these little furry dead cat microphones. So they're adhesive and you just literally stick them on over your GoPro. So these little microphones are great because they reduce the amount of wind that is able to get into your camera, so you can hear things a lot clearer. You can pick up different sounds. So again, using that example of mountain biking, you'll be able to hear the tires on the ground, the tires going through the different terrain, changing gear, the sound of the hub, all those little intricate details that you'd love to hear, but don't when you don't have a microphone cover because you've got all this wind noise and external stuff you don't want to hear. I'll also put a link in the description to another accessory that's coming quite handy in the past for me, and it's kind of like a foam cover or case that goes on your GoPro. Makes your GoPro look a little bit bigger, but it has the same effect. Okay, so we'll move on to color. So inside your GoPro, you can select what kind of color profile you want to film in. So there's two in there on the GoPro Hero 9. You can either shoot in GoPro's color or you can shoot in flat. GoPro color is generally the best starting point for beginners, mainly because GoPro pretty much does all the work for you and has all these nice vivid colors already installed on your footage, which is kind of like gets you 85-90% of the way there. But if you wanted to take your videos to the next level and you were looking at doing more post-editing production stuff, I'd probably go for a flat profile. So what flat basically does is it desaturates your footage and takes all the, well, not all the color, but it takes a lot of the color out, so that when you are in post-production you can reintroduce that color in many different ways to like your personal style or whatever you want really. So gives you a bit more manual control of your footage basically. But for 99% of people watching this beginner video, stick it in GoPro color mode and you won't be disappointed. Absolutely beautiful. So those are basically the main settings that you can play with in the camera. I want to just touch upon actually when you're shooting footage. So now you've got your camera set up. When you're actually going out and getting footage with your camera, with your GoPro, there's a couple of things to keep in mind, because I think these are actually more important than the settings that you use. First thing for me has always been planning what I want to shoot. If I know where I'm going, kind of have in mind like what kind of videos I want to get. That kind of removes all the guesswork, so then you can actually get to your location, you can kind of know what you're after. Sometimes, you know, it's nice to film stuff just ad hoc. Say for example, you're on an adventure and you've no idea what's going to happen. Then you just film as much as you can, which is my second point on when it comes to filming videos. Get as much footage as you can. Don't skimp on getting footage, even if you think it's going to look rubbish or anything like that. Snap, 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 snap. Get as many videos as you can. Then when it comes to editing later on, you can literally get rid of the ones you don't want and just have the best ones there for your video. And speaking of taking a lot of footage, if you're going to do that, you're going to need a memory card, a decent size memory card. In this camera here, I have a 128GB Extreme SanDisk card. It's like a micro SD card. I think when you buy these GoPros, and usually they come with about a 32GB card, which is okay. Sometimes though, I've been out for about a day or so, and 32 gigabytes just isn't enough. You end up having to delete footage, offloading it halfway through the day just to free up space. So I got this 128 gigabyte card, and I can probably film for 2, 3, maybe even 4 days of solid 1080 footage and not have the worry that I haven't got enough card space. Most important point until last, and this trumps any video setting, any type of shot, or whatever camera you've got. The camera, the gear, doesn't matter. The most important thing to make good quality videos, good quality engaging videos that people actually want to watch, is to tell a story. This is more of a tutorial video though. So if you wanted to make like an adventure video, or you want to document your day, tell a story. Have a beginning, a middle, and an end to your story. So that could be the beginning, you're going to a new riding location, you've no idea what it's going to be like. The middle, or the conflicts of your story, is basically you at this new location, for example. The end of your story is the resolution. Was it a good place to ride your bike? Was it a good adventure? Did everything go tits up and didn't work out? If you have a story built into your video, people will stick around longer and they will watch your videos. Whether you're making videos for YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, story trumps everything. That's the key point to this video. So video settings are great, especially if you're just getting started. You need to know the ins and outs of your camera, but the fundamental that grounds all of that is to tell a great story. So I hope you got value and a bit of entertainment from today's video. In the description you'll find all the links to the products that I mentioned in the video, and I'll also include a link to a cheat sheet that I've just literally finished putting together, and it's a video settings cheat sheet. So if you want like a one-page go-to Bible essentially to get you started, so you can just literally open this up and plug in some settings to your camera, feel free to use that. The link is in the description below. Let me know what you think. It's completely free. But other than that, I'm going to enjoy my coffee and this amazing view, and we'll see you in the next video, guys.